Welcome to lecture number 34 for ECE 476 Advanced Embedded Systems. In this lecture, we're looking at using your Pi Pico as a Wi-Fi client on an existing router. So this is similar to the last two lectures where we looked at using a Pi Pico as a server. Here we're using it as a client, and that has some advantages. The Pico actually has two Wi-Fi modes. In AP mode, the Pico is the Wi-Fi server. So if you're out in the country, there is no internet access, that's okay. Everything is going to the local network created by the Pi Pico. That gives you a range about 50 feet or so. In this lecture and the next one, we're going to be using the Pico as a client. What that does is there's a wireless network somewhere that I want to connect to. I'll have to be within about 100 meters of that network to connect to it. Then any other device also connected to that network can talk to my Pi Pico, send data to it, get data from it. In this lecture, we're going to be receiving data from the Pi Pico. The next lecture, sending data to the Pi Pico using tags. So here's kind of what it's going to look like when we're done. Here is my Pi Pico. If I stop the program, run it again, I get an error message. I cannot start a network once it's already been started. When I run these programs, getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. When I run these programs, it tries to connect to the existing router. I can't connect to the servers here at my university because they're too locked down. So instead, I'm using my cell phone as a mobile hotspot. So I've connected to my cell phone. That's who my cell phone is. Any other device can also connect to the cell phone. So this computer, instead of going to the NDSU's network, I've disconnected the network and I'm doing a wireless network through my hotspot on my cell phone. So it's on the same router. I'm going to connect to my Pi Pico, that's this guy, and it is receiving data from the Pico. So this is actually real-time data. So you can kind of see what's happening. This is the temperature of the Pi Pico, 31.6 degrees Celsius. These are the voltages on the potentiometer. As I move the pot around, it changes the voltage from 0 to 3.3 volts. These are the push buttons. When I push a button, I ground it. So push the first button, it's grounded. Push the second button, it's grounded. And the counter is every second it pings. There's an update every second. So I can see what's happening in the Pico world from a web page. How do we do that? So really that's the goal of this lecture. How do I set up this web page? Well, to do that, there's a couple things I need to do. First, I need to have a wireless network I can connect to. That's my cell phone. Actually, that's step 0. The step after that, step 1, is turn on the Pico's Wi-Fi. Now, I've actually got two options. I can use the local area network in AP mode. That was the last lecture. Or I can connect to an existing Wi-Fi network. That's this lecture. So the difference is when I connect, I do this one. I do this guy right here, a wireless local area network rather than AP mode. What the code then looks like is this. I'll tell it what country I'm in, set up the wireless network. Here's your ID and password for your network. I then try to connect. It keeps on looping until I do connect. And once you're connected, it'll tell you successful. Here is the IP information. This is the name of the network that I'm connecting to. And there's a couple other options. I can find out is a network active or not. I can activate a network. I can deactivate a network. I can connect to a network. The connect command tells me which network I want to connect to, its ID and password. I can disconnect from that network, and I can also scan. what are all the wireless networks in my area? I can find the status of the connection. The status will either tell me that I failed to connect due to bad password, bad ID, some other reason. If the network is idle, that's a 0. 1 is you're trying to connect, that's the trying. And what you're hoping for is a 3, saying successful connected. Successful connection. I can find out, am I connected or not? That is connected. I can find the configuration, the IP address, subnetwork address or mask, the gateway server, DNS server. This is really the part that I care about. And some other options, I can set the channel, I can set the SSID, find out what the channel is. I can also adjust the power management. That affects the range. I can disable power management, set for maximum performance, balance performance versus power, stuff like that. So as an example, for example, if I run this program, modify slightly, if the network's already active, turn it off. You basically can't turn it on once it's already on. If I run this, it tries to connect to a network, and boom, I did it. Okay, next thing you can do. Once you connect to a network, I can connect to a web page. For example, if I want to read the contents of Bison Academy, I can do the following. I can connect to a network and do a URL request and pick your favorite web page. Once I get it, it'll echo back the contents of that page and I can print it. Now, I'm not really sure how this is useful. What that looks like is this. This is the web page for Bison Academy. How that helps, I don't really know, but there it is. More useful. Let's create a web page. So let's start with everybody's favorite web page, like Hello World. Come up with a code that generates this. Well, first I have to have the HTML code for creating Hello World. That's the same that we had before. HTML program that has the body, heading, Hello World. I'll have the main routine. I'll need to import NetManager. That's from Pepe80, also in Bison Academy. There's a couple of versions of NetManager. You want the one from Pepe80. I'll then need to set up my SSID, password, connect to the existing network, have the subroutine just like we did before, called web page. When I call it, it's going to return the text file that creates the web page. Basically the same document up here, stripping out the carriage return line feeds. That's what that does, strip them out. I'll then open a socket, that address 0000, why not? Lock that socket and listen for a response. The main routine then is going to look for a connection. Once it receives a connection, it then pulls back the response from the web page, does nothing to it, ignores it. We'll do that next lecture. The web page can send data back to the Pico. That's not this lecture. That's the next one. Ignore anything that comes back, and they'll echo back the web page. And what you should see is Hello World. So if I try that, so let's try that. This is the Hello World website. I had to power off, power on my Pico to clear the current network. Start it. It's trying to connect. Once it's connected, it is now connected to my network. And if I go to this address, 192.168.43.174, that's this guy right here, there's my web page. Okay, so now that I can create a web page, I can send data from the Pico to other devices by updating that web page. So each time I get a ping, I'm going to show you that. Here's Thani. Here's my web page. Every time I do refresh, I get a message back. Refresh, refresh. I can change the web page every time I get a ping. So let's set up a web page that tells you the current status of the Pico. Well, to do that, I need to first set up my web page. I am going to include a couple different items. So here's my HTML page. I'm going to use dummy variables for temperature, voltage, buttons, counter. And then in the web page routine, I'm going to search and replace these with the actual values. There's probably a better way to do it, but this works. And the web page subroutine. So this is back to Python. I'm going to open up that text file. This is the text file, includes character and line feeds, stuff like that. Strip out all the character and line feeds and replace AAA with the first string, second string, so on. These are brought into strings. Then in the main loop, what I'll do is read, well, I'm going to be waiting for a ping from the client, another client. Once I get a ping, I'm going to increase my counter, read the voltages, read the temperature of the Pi Pico, call the subroutine web page, passing these parameters, basically insert these into the web page, respond to the other client with the updated web page, and then close the connection. And what that does, okay, show what that does. Open up this file, stop the Pico, run a new one. It'll try to set up a new connection. Once I'm connected, I can go to my web browser, update it, and there's my data. Every time I hit refresh, I get new data. And actually modify it a little bit. If I include this line in my HTML code, that forces an automatic refresh every second. So what you get noise in the background is doing construction. What you get is every second the web page is updated and you're seeing the real-time data. So here's the voltages. And on the analog input I can vary that. Here's the push buttons. And the counter. How many pings I've had. One update every second. I'm actually counting by 2 every second. So the text is basically the same as we had before. It's got dummy variables for the temperatures, voltages. Did that. So in summary, if a Wi-Fi network already exists, you can have your Pi Pico connect to it. And you'll connect as a client. The advantage is you've got a longer range. It's the range of your Wi-Fi network. Typically 300 feet is not unusual. Once you're connected, other clients on that same Wi-Fi network can see what's happening on the Pico. They can connect the Pico's URL address and display data that's coming from the Pi Pico every ping. This doesn't allow you to connect through the internet so anybody in the world can see it. Only devices on your same network can see it. That's lecture number 34 for for ECE port 76, setting up or connecting to a Wi-Fi network, and having other devices see the status of your Pico. If you want the other devices to change data on the Pico, that's the next lecture.